Hello, and welcome to the second webinar of the FY26 of the Community One Stop for Growth. My name is Juan Vega. I'm the Assistant Secretary for Communities and Programs here at the Executive Office of Economic Development. And on behalf of the Healy Driscoll Administration, Economic Development Secretary Yvonne Howe, I want to thank you for joining us today, as well as for your interest in supporting and advancing economic growth in your community. This is our second and final live webinar for the FY26 round. A recording of the first webinar is like this one, the first one being the one-stop overview, will soon be available to view on the one-stop website. We will also be posting several pre-recorded webinars this week. Tomorrow we will be posting the technology webinars, which are designed to help users with actually accessing and navigating the IGX system. And then next week, we will be uploading individual webinars for each of the 12 one-stop programs. We'll be taking questions at the end of today's presentation as time allows, and we invite you to start using the Q&A function on the screen to submit your questions. I will take a moment to note that we are recording this webinar, and we'll be posting the recording on the One Stop website later this week. Please be advised that recording meetings by any means, including the use of any AI applications without prior permission, is strictly prohibited. Next, we want to just walk through the roadmap, the agenda for the day. For the webinar, the purpose of today's webinar is to guide you through the One Stop application and help you understand where your projects fit within the one-stop development continuum. We will start with just an overview or review of the important topics that we covered in the first webinar as a refresher, and then dive into explanation of how your projects might fit into the one-stop with this series of example applications based off submissions from prior years. Finally, we'll wrap up with a summary of the key takeaways and next steps. And with that, I want to get us started. So we're going to start by providing this quick recap of the one-stop process. So starting with the programs available as listed here. As we had noted in the first webinar, EOED has the MassWorks Infrastructure Program, Massachusetts Downtown Initiative, Rural Development Fund, and new this year is the Massachusetts Vacant Storefront Program. We also have EOHLC's Community Planning Grant Program, the Housing Choice Grant Program, and the Housing Works Infrastructure Grant Program. And finally, our partners at Mass Development have their Brownfield Redevelopment Fund, Site Readiness Program, Underutilized Properties Program, Real Estate Technical Services, and also new this year, the TDI Equity Investment Program. You can visit each program's website to view their specific guidelines on the one-stop webpage. For a deeper dive, we recommend viewing program webinars, which will be posted online next week. Next up, just a quick recap on the next few slides. We want to just, again, highlight that the one-stop was designed around a framework that we call the development continuum. The continuum represents the life cycle of a major community development project from the initial community visioning through final construction. Applicants should look and consider the development continuum as a guide for where their project may fit within the one-stop. All projects submitted to the one-stop fit within a single development continuum category. The continuum is broken up in two broad groups, which we'll cover next. So one side of the continuum is what we consider the preparing for growth. And these are the categories: community activation and placemaking, planning and zoning, and site preparation. We consider these grants to be the ones that support activities and those initial steps by Q-based actors to attract and guide private investment in a community. The grants provided through these categories support activities and initial steps by community-based actors to attract and guide the the private investment in that community. This could include creating a business improvement district, developing a municipal master plan to guide development, or conducting the preliminary site work needed to attract private investment. And here we go. We have slides. Next up on the other side, we have the categories that we consider catalyzing specific projects. These are projects where to support the implementation of construction activities that are ready to leverage private investment, leading to new commercial, industrial, and residential development, as well as other improvements that further community vision. And so the building category supports vertical construction in the areas listed here, including the rehabilitation of blighted structures. And then the infrastructure side category supports the construction of horizontal infrastructure required to help create more housing and jobs. This could include improvements to roadways, water lines, electric utilities, and other infrastructure required to unlock a new development. Next up, continuing the recap, we just wanted to, the final topic for the recap, we wanted to get into the one-stop full application, which is the vehicle through which you will actually be requesting the grant funds. And so there are 3 forms as listed here. Form 1 is the application information. Form 2 is where you will really get into the details of the project. And then Form 3 is the certifications, affirming authority to submit the application. Then applicants pursuing funding from the Housing Choice Grant Program will also need to complete a Form 2A, which are the Housing Choice additional questions. Eligible applicants will be asked whether like the project to be reviewed by Housing Choice and must opt in to answer the question. It's very important to note that the application seeking funding for multiple projects must submit separate applications for each. And while we don't have any limit on the number of applications a single organization can submit, it is important to remember, however, that similar applications will naturally compete against each other within the same category. I now would like to pass it on to my colleague, Pat, to start walking us through the actual full application.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Juan. So my name is Pat Shannon. I am the director of the Community One Stop for Growth here at EOED. Before we jump into the scenarios, I just want to take some time to highlight the most important question in the full application, which is question 2.4, project category for grant consideration. So this is where applicants will let us know where their project falls within the development continuum. The answers provided here will guide the questions that the applicants ask throughout the rest of the application, and they largely determine which programs will be reviewing the application for funding. So applicants will first select the development continuum category, or they'll select the development continuum category and then the subsequent project type and project focus that best fit the project being proposed. So in the example on the screen here, we have an applicant that has a project in the site preparation development continuum category. And then each development continuum category is broken up into multiple project types. So the project type is a general description of the purpose of the project. Each project type is tied to is mainly tied to a one-stop program. So here the applicant has a brownfield project, so they chose brownfield site cleanup as their project type. And then the applicant will select a more specific project focus. So while the project type is centered on the goal of the project focus describes how funds would actually be used. In the example on the screen, you can see that if the application received an award, funds would be used to conduct remediation of a brownfield site, as opposed to site assessment, both of which are eligible uses of funds under the Brownfield Redevelopment Fund. So now we're going to jump into the project scenarios. So the first scenario, we have a community that would like to conduct a retail market analysis of their town center to identify opportunities to create a strong commercial base and maximize their visitor experience. So this is a project that would be a good fit for the Massachusetts Downtown Initiative, a program that we often refer to as MDI. MDI provides $30,000 worth of consultant technical assistance to identify strategies for improving a community's downtown area. MDI resides in the community activation and placemaking development continuum category under the project type technical assistance for downtowns. When the applicant opens the project focus, they're going to see that there's a pretty long list of the different kinds of projects that MDI supports. So in this case, the applicant chose economics of downtown consultant services as it most closely matched the scope of their project. I will note that many of the eligible projects in MDI result in a study with recommendations for downtown improvements. However, the program also supports feasibility studies required to kind of form a business improvement district, as well as provide support in actually implementing the bid. For our second scenario, we have a community that would like to work with property owners to attract businesses to occupy prominent storefronts in their downtown that have sat vacant for a long period of time. The goal is to reactivate these storefronts and re-energize the surrounding area. And this is a great example of a community that should consider pursuing the Massachusetts Vacant Storefront Program. Again, the Vacant Storefront Program is one of 2 new offerings in the One Stop this year. Through the program, communities can apply for access to up to $50,000 worth of dedicated refundable tax credits to use as a tool to attract businesses to storefronts that have sat vacant for over 6 months. If awarded, the community can choose to focus the allotment of tax credits on a single vacant storefront, or can choose to spread it out across multiple storefronts. An award through the program grants the municipality access to tax credits through 2026. So applicants should demonstrate that they will be able to use the tax credits within the year. This is a great opportunity that can benefit communities of all sizes across the state. So we really encourage you to review the guidelines, watch the program webinar, and attend program office hours if you're interested in pursuing this option. Here we have a housing choice community that would like to advance their housing master plan by conducting a housing market study, conceptual designs, traffic impact analysis, stakeholder outreach, and preparation of a development pro forma. So here the applicant's looking for support for planning activities to prepare for housing growth in their community. Oop, it looks like I might have lost my PowerPoint. So one moment. Get it back. So again, here the applicant's looking to support planning activities to prepare for housing growth in the community. So this is a great fit for the planning for housing project type within the planning and zoning category. This application would most likely be reviewed by the Community Planning Grant Program. Community Planning Grant Program offers 3 types of projects within the planning and zoning category. There's community plans, zoning revisions, and planning for housing. Because the community has housing choice designation, the application could also be reviewed by the Housing Choice Grant Program. Housing Choice may review projects submitted through the planning and zoning, site preparation, building and infrastructure, development continuum categories. And as Juan mentioned a moment ago, in order to be considered for funding by the Housing Choice, the applicant must actually opt into or indicate that they would like the project reviewed by the program, and then they'll have to answer the questions on Form 2A, Housing Choice Additional Questions. Here we have a city that's looking for technical assistance to create a district redevelopment plan for a large area containing several underutilized buildings, as well as public surplus properties. In this case, the applicant will choose district redevelopment technical assistance as the project type. Again, this is under the planning and zoning category. This is there's only one project focus option for this project type, so the applicant will select the planning for growth in a commercial, industrial, or mixed-use district. District redevelopment technical assistance projects are primarily funded by the Real Estate Services Technical Assistance Program. These are planning projects that focus on driving development activities in commercial, industrial, or mixed-use districts. Examples of some of the planning activities include planning for district redevelopment, conducting a corridor study, or even preparing for district improvement financing. The project area should include underutilized properties and or municipally surplus properties in order for the application to be competitive. In this scenario, a community owns a long vacant school building that it would like to dispose of for future redevelopment. The town needs support to conduct a market feasibility study to determine the best use of for the best future use for the site. So municipal surplus property disposition is another type of project that can be supported by real estate services technical assistance. This project type is actually in the site preparation development continuum category. And the purpose is to determine the best use of municipally owned property that has been or will be officially surplused by the community. Real estate services can assist with feasibility and planning studies in addition to creating concept level master plans. They can also develop a RFP to support the municipality's disposition process. In our sixth scenario, we have a redevelopment authority that is requesting funding to design water and sewer upgrades on a former municipal airport site. The improvements are necessary to unlock the development of the development potential for approximately 13 acres of industrial zoned land. So this project is a great fit for the site readiness program, which is represented by the site improvements to unlock development project type within the site preparation and development continuum category. The scope of work for this project is focused on earlier stage design work as opposed to construction. So when looking at the project focus options available, the applicant will choose site readiness pre-construction. Site readiness projects require that the applicant select an additional sub-focus layer to further specify which eligible pre-construction activity the project will engage in. So it's not shown on the screen here, but basically in the application, you'll see a third dropdown. And then in this case, the applicant would want to choose site plan design as their sub-focus. All right, moving along. In our next scenario, we have a for-profit developer in a gateway city requesting funding to support improvements required to reactivate a long vacant property into a cafe and retail shop. The property is located within the city's TDI district, and the improvements are expected to create benefits for the surrounding area by driving foot traffic and renewed interest. So here's a great example of a project that would fit the One Stop's second new addition FY26, which is the TDI Equity Investment Program. This program has been in existence for a few years outside of the One Stop as part of Mass Development's Transformative Development Initiative, which is known as TDI. TDI focuses on driving economic development in the downtowns and commercial districts of gateway cities. The TDI Equity Investment Program provides funding to support improvements to commercial space that will produce significant economic impacts within a TDI district. So generally, this involves the reactivation of underutilized storefronts and other prominent spaces within a district to drive more foot traffic, energy, and interest in the area, benefiting not just the property itself, but the district as a whole. TDI Equity accepts applications from all organization types, but only funds projects within an active TDI district. Only applicants with a project in a community that has a TDI district will see this as an option when completing the application. And I'll also note that this program has many similarities to the underutilized properties program. So in some cases, an application submitted through this project type may be reviewed by both programs. All right, so now we're going to move to the end of the development continuum with a few scenarios related to requests for infrastructure funding. First, we have a small town that must make streetscape and waterline improvements to allow for new residential development that will bring much needed market rate and affordable housing units to the community. So because this is a fully residential development, the applicant will choose the public infrastructure to support housing growth project type option in the infrastructure development continuum category. This application will be primarily reviewed by the Housing Works infrastructure program. Housing Works mission is to mission is to fund infrastructure improvements that unlock housing development across the state. The project scope includes construction of infrastructure required to unlock the development, so they'll select construction as the project focus. So in addition to being reviewed by Housing Works, the application is being submitted by a small town, so they are eligible for review by the Rural Development Fund. Any community with a population density of 500 persons per square mile and or a total population less than 7,000 is automatically designated as a rural community for the purposes of this program. The Rural Development Fund will consider projects submitted through the planning and zoning, site preparation, building, and infrastructure categories, with the exception of the brownfields projects. I will also note that rural has a cap of 500,000, so the project budget would have to kind of fall in the program's spending limit. All right, moving on. Next we have a municipality that it requests funding to support the design of streetscape and utility improvements that are required to unlock a large mixed-use development that includes 40,000 square feet of commercial space and hundreds of units of housing. So although this is similar to the last project, the infrastructure improvements here support the development of both housing and commercial space, making it a mixed-use project. Because there's a commercial element, this project's best suited to be reviewed by the MassWorks infrastructure program. This year, to further specify the type of development that the infrastructure project is supporting, we broke up the MassWorks aligned projects into two separate project types: public infrastructure to support mixed-use development as one project type, and then public infrastructure to support commercial or industrial development as a second project type. In this case, the applicant would want to choose the mixed use option. A couple important program notes. So first off, to be competitive for MassWorks funding, the public infrastructure improvements should directly support a private development project with a developer identified. Projects that support a public building or recreation facility will not be competitive for funding. In our final infrastructure example, we have a rural community requesting funding to replace a culvert that failed after a series of intense storms. The road that the culvert's on serves as a primary access to the center of town, and the culvert failure hinders the ability of the town's emergency services to respond quickly to emergencies. So in addition to funding infrastructure to support private development, a portion of MassWorks funding is dedicated to small town road improvements to enhance public safety, which we often refer to as STRAP. So the funding, this funding is only available to municipalities with a population under 7,000, and awards are capped at $1 million. It's important for any communities that submit one of these projects to demonstrate that the existing road conditions present a public safety risk. We just have a couple more examples of cases where an applicant has multiple projects. So in our first example, we have a community that is looking for access to tax credits to incentivize business to occupy vacant storefronts in the town's commercial district. And they would also like to request funding to construct a public water line improvements to unlock a large commercial development that will bring new jobs to the area. So it's very common for a single organization to seek funding for multiple projects within the same one-stop round. It's important for applicants to remember that a separate application must be submitted for each project. So again, in this case, we'll have two separate applications. The first one will fall in the community activation placemaking development continuing category under the incentivized business in a vacant downtown storefront store project type. So they'll be competing for access to tax credits through the vacant storefront program. The second project is an infrastructure project, and specifically public infrastructure to support commercial or industrial development. and will likely be reviewed by MassWorks. So these two applications or two projects are at kind of opposite ends of the development continuum. So when the applicant's filling out the two applications, they'll see that they're asked very different types of questions throughout the application related to each project. All right, so for our last example, we have a developer that seeks funding to support the redevelopment of an underutilized historic property into 10 housing units with retail space on the street level. The developer also owns a previously abandoned property 3 blocks away and seeks funding to make the building code compliant to allow for the construction of new commercial space. The two projects described here have similar scopes and will likely result in similar applications. However, they are in different locations, they're different properties, and they need to be submitted as separate applications. In both cases, the applicant will choose underutilized property rehabilitation as the project type within the building category. And both are construction projects. So again, the applicant will select underutilized property construction for both. Based on the selections made in 2.4, both applications will likely be reviewed by the Underutilized Properties Program. While the applicant is certainly allowed to submit both of these projects, we don't have a limit on the number of applications that can be submitted. These will naturally compete against each other, so the applicant may want to consider prioritizing the projects and focusing on projects deemed highest priority. So with that, I will hand it back to Juan.
Great. Thank you very much, Pat. So we kind of have gone through these various scenarios to give you a look at the various ways that you can think of your project in terms of the continuum and where and how it may be a fit. We know that this isn't representative of all the possible projects, and we understand that there's many different types of projects and circumstances for the need for support across the Commonwealth. So we, at this point, want to really focus on the expression of interest. The best way to find out if your project may be a fit for any of the funding sources within the One Stop is by participating in the expression of interest process. We refer to it as the EOI. It is an optional step, but highly recommended. We've designed the EOI to be a low effort but high value component of the One Stop. The prospective applicant simply goes into the One Stop website, completes a very short web form, providing high level information about the project. Usually should take about 5 minutes to complete. It doesn't require any extensive narratives, really just kind of the highlights of the project components. Then after a quick review, the user will receive, usually within 1 to 3 business days, will receive a feedback report. And in it, you will get an indication of whether the project as described is a potential fit for any of the grant programs offered through the One Stop. And if it is a fit, potential fit, then the report will include some tips and advice on how to strengthen an application. It'll include directions on which selections make on question 2.4, and then some tips about how what to include to make sure that your application is as competitive as possible. Here on the screen, you have kind of on the right there an example of something that would come out as a feedback report. We also strongly encourage applicants to attend and ask questions during the virtual office hours. You can attend a general guidance which has, will cover general topics about the One Stop and about the process. And then we will also be holding specific program office hours where you'd be able to interact directly with or ask questions directly of the program staff that actually runs the program. So by feedback reports include links to register when you will include links for the off hours that most closely relate to the project topic that you selected. Next, we'll just go through kind of some overarching takeaways from this webinar. So the Community One Stop intended to boost accessibility of state guidance and as well as partnership, improve the alignment of various funding programs, reduce the administrative burden on the communities, and support strategic project planning. Development community category and project type and project focus options from question 2.4 really are the drivers in terms of the questions that are asked throughout the application, and largely determine which programs will be reviewing your application. Want to highlight there are two new great opportunities available to applicants this year. The vacant storefront program, which is tied to the incentivized business and vacant downtown storefronts, project type in the community activation and placemaking, and then of course the TDI equity investment program, which is associated with the revitalized commercial space in the TDI district project type in the building category. The Community One Stop for Growth builds in opportunities for applicants to receive guidance on their project ideas through the expression of interest and virtual office hours. Okay, next up, we will now, that concludes the presentation part. We would now like to move into the questions that you asked. We again invite you to submit questions directly into the Q&A. Great. So we'll start with just kind of a few questions we do get very often. And so we will start with, why can't, I'm going to submit my full application. Why can I not submit my full application? And Pat, you want to take a crack at that, or I'm happy to, you working on the deck? Oh, you're on mute.
Having some technical issues with the deck, but yeah, sure. So we get this question every year. Why can't I submit my application? And there's usually two answers to that. Number one, the user, in order to submit an application, a user needs to have a grant administrator role. So there's three roles in the IGX system. There's grant administrator, grantee staff, and consultant. Grantee staff and consultants can work on an application and can save the application, but they are not able to create or submit an application. So only grant administrators can do that. The other reason could just be that you're working on the application outside of our full application submission period. So right now the application is available to all applicants to work on the application, but you can't actually start submitting until May 5th. So our full application submission period runs from May 5th through the final deadline of June 4th.
Great, thank you. Pat, is that projecting correctly?
No, but I'll get it back over here.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing that. Let's see, the next up, so I have 3 projects that I want to submit to the One Stop. How many applications can I submit? 1 second, jumping down to that section.
Yeah, I could just jump in. So there's, if you have 3 projects to submit, you can submit 3 applications. There's no limit to the number of applications that any one organization can submit. There's also no limit to the number of awards that can be provided to a single application. But again, as I kind of noted on my last scenario there, we do always caution applicants that similar projects are likely to be reviewed by the same program, so that they'll naturally end up competing against one another.
Great, thank you. And then another question we get a lot of, there's a question about are there partners to this project? We're partnering with another organization to complete the project. Can we file a joint application, or should we consider each application? And in this case, I mean, the answer is yes, but we do want you to be cognizant when we're asking this in the first part of the application. There's an opportunity to indicate if the project is being submitted jointly with another organization. To be clear, when we refer to joint application, it's what we mean is a formal arrangement where one or more, two or more organizations have an agreement to allocate funds between the organizations to carry out a common project. We will see this sometimes with small towns who pair up and to try to complete a road project in each municipality, and it's easier to do it all as one big project. We do understand that some of you have just partner organizations that you're working with as part of your project, and you're welcome to mention those like in the narrative questions and refer to them. But for the actual question where it says, is this a joint application? What we're looking for is, are you requesting funding that's going to go to not just your organization, but it's going to be allocated across two or more organizations? Okay. So let's see, again, we invite you to keep submitting questions through the queue. So we have someone asking, so when the One Stop program was first started, the program was supposed to be a clearinghouse for all grants from most state agencies. And then should agencies who need grant funding use the One Stop, or should they go like to MassDOT directly? And so while the One Stop does work, clearinghouse for many state programs, it is limited to grant resources that seek to catalyze local economic growth. And so the programs you see built on the One Stop are related in that way. They do cross organizations and secretariats. But the other organizations such as MassDOT and EEA, for example, have a whole host of other grant programs that are related to different goals. And so you should look to those organizations to find how to best apply to those resources. I will mention that some of our partner organizations or other secretariats are also looking at ways to streamline their own processes and hopefully provide a way for you to streamline. Pat, the next one is about, of the examples provided, how many were approved for grant funds or how many were successful?
Yeah, and so I also just note that the examples provided were inspired by past projects. They weren't exactly necessarily the scopes, but most of those were examples of projects that received funding in past rounds.
So we tried to give examples of things that ended up being successful. Great. So let's see, a building is facing potential underutilization due to necessary code compliance upgrades. Would this type of project align align with the One Stop's grant priorities?
Yeah, so I would just say that kind of for underutilized due to necessary. So yeah, this could be a fit for the underutilized properties program, but I would say that for to provide a little more context to us, submit an expression of interest. We'll be able to tell you, number one, is the project a fit, and number two, which programs the project may be a fit, maybe a match for. As what we mentioned before, it's a super simple web form on the One Stop website. It should just take about 5 minutes to submit. So pretty low effort, and will provide you with a report saying whether or not it's a fit or whether or not it may be a fit for funding through the One Stop. And then if it is, which program. So in this case, if it were a UPP, would tell you and would give you some tips about what UPP looks for in a successful application.
Great, thank you. Next up, there's a question about, I'm part of an organization that is fiscally sponsored. Do I apply under the name of my organization or the fiscal host? I think in general terms, the application should be submitted by the organization that is going to receive the funds and carry out the project. We anticipate that to be one of the same organization. There's also an authorization to submit component to this, and certifications that need to be made about, if awarded, compliance with state law and financing rules. I would just note, you should probably bring this question to the particular program office hours that you're thinking of to make sure that it is compatible with what they'd be looking for. But generally speaking, a lot of some of the questions around the organization in the full application are trying to ascertain the capacity of the organization to actually carry out the project. And so not having not being fiscally set up to be able to receive and manage the grant may be a question. So the advice essentially would be attend the programmer if you know the program you are likely to fall in, and try to get a sense from the program managers how they would view and evaluate a situation like this.
Yeah, and I guess just for an additional plug for the expression of interest, I will note that if you complete an expression of interest, get the feedback report, we'll send the report will include links to register for the office hours that fit the project or fit the program that for the programs that best fit the project. So again, another good reason to participate in the expression of interest.
Got it. Let's see. Next up, we have a question about the grant administrator role, which is in reference to the IGX platform, have to be the one to submit the EOI. And
so the answer to that's no. The EOI, yeah, as Juan noted, the grant administrator role is specific to IGX. The expression of interest is now outside of IGX. It's just an open web form on the One Stop website. You actually don't even, you don't necessarily have to have an account in IGX. You don't need to have participated in the One Stop before. You can just go to the website, fill out the form, and the report will be emailed to the address that's provided on the form. So yeah, again, low barrier. Encourage you to go check that out.
Yeah. And I mean, we do, obviously, if the person that's going to submit the full application can be the same person that does the EOI, but at that point, you don't need to have a particular role. But I will take the opportunity to stress, I think that, when in IGX, when you're doing the full application, it will grant the administrator that has the only one that has the authority to actually submit the full application. So just keep in mind, there's two different processes. Let's see, how do matching funds work? So I'll take this on because I think in the infrastructure, particularly in MassWorks, this is the question. So while there's no actual match requirement for MassWorks in most of the programs here, Pat, is that true? That are there any programs that do require a match? Do you recall?
This year I don't believe there are.
Okay. But we certainly encourage you to closely look at the guidelines for the program you're looking at. But for MassWorks and the larger infrastructure programs, there's no actual match requirement. However, successful applications in previous one-stop rounds, usually have been municipalities that include somewhere between a 25 and 50% on average match for the funds. So it is taken into consideration during the evaluation. So not a requirement, but certainly if the community has the ability to do so, you're certainly encouraged to provide a match to the state funds from non-state sources. And similarly on the question, should matching funds be from FY20 since we're applying now, or FY26, since that will be when the project commences? So funds, so this depends. I think, any funds that you have spent, that you're currently spending on a project, for example, anything you're doing for pre-development and initial, bid packages ready that are happening in this fiscal year. That's fine to show that it's to the extent that it is directly related to the project that you're going to do in FY26. Yeah, there isn't, there's no distinction there. We're just looking for whenever the match funds are made, usually within the last, within the previous year, that directly related to the project. And I would just say also, be aware that grant funds, if you do receive a grant, the funds can't be used to reimburse costs that were incurred prior to having a grant contract. So that's important to know. Okay, looks like, again, we have a couple of minutes here. If there are any additional questions, please feel free to submit those. Seeing none, we can.
Yeah, I'll just note, if you have questions after this session, please feel free to email onestop@mass.gov. I guess that's here on the screen, but that's the best way to reach the One Stop team.
Okay, excellent. And so just to wrap this up, we just, again, a significant benefit to the Community One Stop is that it creates additional opportunities for state reviewers. For all of us that run programs, it gives us a really good view into what the communities are trying to accomplish, and also various opportunities to engage with the applicants regarding the project. For next steps, again, if you have questions, we're asking you to please type them in to the Q&A, and we'd be happy to take those on. For as far as kind of next steps, we encourage you to watch the webinars. If you missed the first one live, there will be a recording available. And we ask that any of your staff or partners that are intending to participate in the ones that should watch the webinars just to learn about the process and get guidance on how to develop a strong application. We can't stress enough, please review carefully the NOFA and the guidelines for the individual programs. There are nuances. Each program, as you know, some of the programs are run through EOED, some of Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, and then some by Mass Development. And so you want to be clear about what the expectations are in terms of being able to access funds from these different sources. We can't stress enough also, submit an EOI. You can submit as many as you like, and you can submit the project in various forums and get different, potentially get feedback for the different scenarios that you pose. Those can be accessed, the EOI form can be accessed directly to the One Stop website, and it will remain open through March 26th. Pat will be posting and leading, along with the program managers, a series of office hours. And during that time, we will be able to continue answering questions. Once you've gone through the guidelines, that would be a good opportunity to, just take note of anything that isn't clear that you'd like more clarification on and bring them to the office hours. We also provide on the website templates of the full application and sample templates by program. This is a good tool if you'd like to just download a copy in Word and be able to just use it to draft some of the responses to get them ready to put into the actual into the IGX system. And then finally, just we're available. Please reach out if you'd like to contact someone from the One Stop team with any additional questions. Just please send them in to onestop@mass.gov. It looks like we do have a couple more before we have a couple of minutes before we need to wrap up. So it's a question about what happened to the Urban Agenda grants. As we mentioned in the first webinar, the Urban Agenda Grant Program is a program here at EOED The only change is that it won't be accepting applications through the one-stop process. Later in the spring, we will be issuing on the EOED website a new RFP and a new timeline for agenda applications in the spring. So we will be moving up the timeline and trying to get those awards applications submitted and awards made earlier in the year. Pat, there's a question here about, are there any specific guidance or webinars that get more in depth for each category?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, we have, as Juan just mentioned, we have our program webinar series that we're going to be releasing next week. So that'll be a deep dive into each individual program. So there'll be 12 videos, and those are being uploaded to our website next Thursday, the 13th. We also will be hosting, kind of changing the way that we are holding our program office hours this year. So last year we had an individual office hour for each program. This year we're actually kind of doing joint office hours between programs, and generally those will be held by development continuum category. So, you know, for community activation and placemaking, we'll have Mass Downtown Initiative and vacant storefronts will be the same webinar. Infrastructure will have MassWorks and Housing Works staff there. So that's a great opportunity to come ask questions, learn from other applicants' questions, and you can kind of get the kind of a full view of kind of insights from the different programs within each development continuum category.
Great. And then we have two more questions that I think are related. I mean, one is, if we're planning a community activation event, is there a grant we'd be a good fit for? You know, this is kind of being asked in the context of agenda. As I mentioned, the Urban Agenda Grant Program will continue, and we should look to see if that's a fit there. But we point you back to expression of interest to EOI as a place to understand where your specific project or thinking might fit. There's also a question about asking, will you be able to help us place where a project falls on the development continuum if we're unsure? Again, in both those questions, I think the answer is the EOI is the best place to start. Our goal here is to try to provide as much guidance and feedback at the front end here, which is what the One Stop was designed to do, in order to help direct you to the place in the full application before you start committing a lot of time to the full application. And so that we want you to, if you're going to spend time on a full application, then it be to get you to the right sections and the right programs that potentially could fund your project.
Yeah,
So
I guess I'll also just note, you know,
yeah,
you can look at the One Stop website as well. We have a whole development continuum webpage within the One Stop website, which kind of lays out the different project or the different programs and kind of what they fund in each category. And then actually when you're in the One Stop application, there's a section in each application that's called One Stop Resources, and we have similar information. So when you're filling out the application, you can just open that form. You can see it's kind of like a consolidation of the information available on our website. So if you're having some doubts when you're in the application, you can always go there and for a little bit of help.
Great, thank you. Okay, so it seems like we've kind of got the questions that we're going to be coming today for this webinar. Again, we are, you know, the One Stop is open for business. We are here and really looking forward to hear about your projects and to review your project proposals. onestop@mass.gov is where you can send additional questions. Visit the website. The EOI process will not only give you the feedback that you will get from the project description that you submit, but will also guide you towards the office hours and where you can follow up. Again, thank you very much for participating and being with us during this webinar. This concludes webinar 2 of the FY26 Community One Stop for Growth. Thank you.